If every country in the world is drowning in debt, if the United States owes over $34 trillion, Japan owes over 250% of its GDP, and developing nations owe billions to international lenders, then the question becomes, who is the ultimate creditor? Who is lending all this money? If everyone is in debt? Today, we're unpacking one of the greatest financial mysteries of modern economics. How can the world owe money to itself? Who controls global debt? And is this system sustainable or living on borrowed time? Stay with me for the next more minutes as we explore the hidden world of debt, money creation, central banks, and the global financial network you were never taught in school. National debt is the amount of money a government owes its lenders. But here's what most people don't realize. A government's lenders are not always other countries. They are citizens, banks, corporations, pension funds, insurance companies, foreign investors, international institutions, and central banks. Debt itself is not bad. It becomes dangerous only when interest payments become too high, growth slows, or trust collapses. Every government issues bonds, which are IOUs. People buy these IOUs expecting safe returns. National debt is simply the accumulation of these IOUs. Debt is not one single thing. It has categories. 1. Domestic debt, borrowed from people within the country. Local banks, pension funds, citizens, corporations, central banks. Countries like Japan and Italy have mostly domestic debt. This means the government owes money to its own people. 2. Foreign debt borrowed from outside the country. Foreign governments, international banks, global investors, IMF, World Bank countries like Argentina, Pakistan, Egypt, and Kenya rely heavily on foreign debt. 3. Short-term versus long-term debt. Short-term equals due in months. Long-term equals due in decades. 4. Public debt versus sovereign debt. Public debt includes government plus public institutions. Sovereign debt refers specifically to the central government. Why this matters? Not all debt is equal. Countries with mostly domestic debt have more flexibility. Countries with foreign debt face currency risks and high interest. Here's the full list of who actually owns global debt. 1. Ordinary citizens. Every time someone buys a government bond, they become a creditor. Japan. More than 90% of its debt is held by its own citizens and institutions. 2. Banks. Banks purchase government bonds as safe assets. 3. Pension funds. They need stable returns to pay retirees. 4. Insurance companies. They rely heavily on government bonds. 5. Corporations. Large companies like Apple and Toyota buy government debt globally. 6. International investors, hedge funds, private equity, sovereign wealth funds. 7. Foreign governments. The US owes money to Japan, China, UK, Luxembourg, Switzerland. 8. Central banks. Sometimes the biggest creditor is the country's own central bank. This becomes important later. Yes, some countries are net creditors, meaning they lend more than they borrow. Top net creditors: Japan, the world's largest lender, China, massive foreign exchange reserves, Germany, strong trade surplus, Norway, huge sovereign wealth fund, Switzerland, global financial hub, Singapore, strategic investment funds. These countries hold enormous portfolios of foreign debt. Japan alone has trillions in global assets, but even they still carry domestic debt. So the entire world is interconnected. Here is the big secret. The biggest lender on earth is the global financial system. Here's how it works. 1. Banks create money through lending. When banks issue loans, they create new money digitally. This expands the credit system. 2. Financial markets buy government bonds, mutual funds, ETFs, hedge funds, private investors. Combined, they hold trillions. 3. Central banks buy government debt. During recessions, they buy huge quantities of bonds. This is called quantitative easing. 4. Sovereign wealth funds. Countries like Norway, UAE, and Saudi Arabia invest globally. 5. Corporations hold government bonds. Apple alone holds tens of billions in government securities. So the real creditor is a massive, complex, interconnected network of institutions, not a single country. Here's one of the strangest facts in economics. Many countries owe most of their debt to themselves. How? Because 1. Citizens buy government bonds, meaning the government owes money to its own people. 2. Banks use government bonds as reserves, so the government owes banks inside its own borders. 3. Pension funds rely on government bonds, meaning the government owes retirees. 4. The central bank buys government debt, meaning the government owes its own monetary authority. This becomes a loop. The government borrows from people who depend on the government. It's a circular economy of trust. Countries almost never repay their debt in full. Why? Because they roll it over. Old bonds expire. New bonds are issued. Investors buy the new ones. This cycle repeats indefinitely. As long as inflation is stable, economic growth continues. Investors trust the system, debt can grow forever. That's why the global system doesn't collapse. Yet. So, who ultimately controls everything? It's not politicians, it's not voters, and it's not a secret organization. It's a combination of 1. Central banks. They control interest rates, money supply, and liquidity. 2. Large investment funds. BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street hold massive debt portfolios. 3. Global banks. JP Morgan, HSBC, BNP Paribas, Bank of China. 4. Sovereign wealth funds. They own stakes across global markets. 5. Pension funds. They hold trillions in government bonds. This network forms the real backbone of global lending. No single country controls it. It's a decentralized ecosystem. Let's summarize it simply. The world is in debt to its citizens, its banks, its pensioners, its investors, its central banks, its corporations, and its own financial system. In other words, the global financial system owes money to itself. Debt is not a villain. It's the mechanism that keeps the economy moving. Debt equals trust. Debt equals investment. Debt equals long-term confidence. It's all of us. Today, we see national debt as a normal part of economics. But the concept itself was born from war. Throughout history, kings financed armies by borrowing from merchants. Empires issued bonds to fund conquests. Nations borrowed to build railways, ports, and defences. The Bank of England, founded in 1694, was literally created to fund a war against France. Debt built the modern world. Roads, railroads, electricity grids, universities, water systems, armies, governments. Without debt, the infrastructure of civilization would not exist. This is important to understand. Debt is not a flaw of the system. Debt is the system. A government is not like a household. A household must earn before spending. A government can spend before earning. Why? Because governments create the rules, control taxation, influence interest rates, regulate banks, issue the currency. A government with its own currency cannot go bankrupt the way a business can. It can always issue new currency or restructure old loans. This is why countries like the US and Japan can sustain enormous debt levels, while countries without monetary power collapse quickly. Most people assume governments borrow because they overspend. The reality is more complex. Governments borrow to 1. Stabilize the economy during bad times. When recessions hit, tax revenue falls. Debt fills the gap. 2. Invest in long-term growth. Infrastructure, schools, hospitals. These projects pay off over decades. 3. Protect citizens during crises. Pandemics, natural disasters, wars. Governments step in when no one else can. 4. Smooth out fluctuations. Borrowing prevents economic shockwaves. Debt is not just borrowing. Debt is management of time, shifting resources across the years. Even when economies grow, debt grows faster. Here's why. Reason 1. Economic growth requires credit. Businesses cannot expand without loans. Consumers cannot buy homes without mortgages. Governments cannot invest without bonds. More growth, more debt. Reason 2. The population grows. More citizens mean more demand for services and infrastructure. Reason 3. Technology accelerates borrowing. Modern financial markets can move trillions within seconds. Debt circulates faster than ever. Reason 4. Low interest rates encourage borrowing. For most of the last 20 years, borrowing was historically cheap. The system naturally expands. Debt grows because the economy grows. People imagine debt like a ladder. Country A owes country B. Country B owes country C. This is outdated and wrong. Today's debt system is a web, not a ladder. Countries owe each other, their own citizens, their own banks, international investors, multinational corporations, global funds, central banks. Everyone owes everyone. This interdependence makes collapse less likely, not more. If one major nation fails, the whole web feels the shock. So the system protects itself. Domestic debt is safe because the government controls the currency. Foreign debt is dangerous because it must be repaid in another nation's currency. Exchange rates can rise. Interest rates can spike. Investors can flee. Political tensions can affect repayment. Countries like Argentina and Pakistan struggle due to foreign-denominated debt. Countries like Japan, which borrow mostly from their own citizens, remain stable despite enormous debt levels. Debt is not about size. Debt is about structure. Central banks have the power to raise or lower interest rates, print or destroy money, buy government bonds, regulate banks, control inflation, influence exchange rates. When central banks buy government bonds, they effectively allow the government to borrow from itself. This is why economists say countries with strong central banks cannot be forced into bankruptcy. It's not magic, it's policy. Though debt is essential, it has limits. 1. High interest payments reduce government flexibility. 2. Too much foreign debt creates vulnerability. 3. Political instability can break trust. 4. Inflation becomes difficult to control. 5. A loss of confidence can trigger a crisis. Debt itself doesn't cause collapse. Losing trust does. Trust is the oxygen of global finance. It wouldn't happen overnight. Instead, 1. Investors stop buying a country's bonds. 2. Interest rates spike. 3. Debt becomes more expensive. 4. Currency weakens. 5. Imports become costly. 6. Inflation rises. 7. Government cuts spending. 8. Recession begins. 9. Unemployment spreads. It is a slow-motion chain reaction. But here's the important part. Major economies rarely collapse because the world cannot afford for them to collapse. This is why international lenders rescue Greece, why central banks bail out financial institutions, why governments intervene. The system survives because no one benefits from collapse. Economists see several possible futures. 1. The slow inflation scenario. Debt remains large, but gradually shrinks relative to the economy. 2. The debt monetization scenario. Central banks quietly absorb more government debt. 3. Digital currencies, CBDCs. Governments gain new tools to control the monetary system. 4. Global coordination. Nations renegotiate debt together. 5. Reset or restructuring. A major crisis forces a rewrite of the rules. Regardless of the scenario, debt will remain part of the system. So the next time someone asks, if every country is in debt, who is the creditor? Tell them, it isn't a single nation. It isn't a billionaire. It isn't a secret group. The creditor is the system itself. A system powered by savers, banks, pension funds, corporations, global markets, central banks. And you. Debt is not the enemy. Debt is the tool. Debt is trust. Debt is stability. Debt is modern civilization. If you enjoyed this deep breakdown, hit like, subscribe, and let me know what topic you want next. Thanks for watching.